Your kid's new toy just broke, and you probably thought exactly what every parent thinks. It's just cheap plastic, or my kid was playing too rough with it. But here's the reason. It was the product. And the people who designed it knew exactly when it would happen, before your kid ever touched it. That toy broke, right on schedule. It is not your child's fault. Now, you stood in a toy store frustrated, replacing something you bought just a month ago. You aren't going crazy. The system is actually rigged against you. Today, we're exposing the dirty secrets of the world's biggest toy companies, how they play tricks on your mind, how they build toys to fail on purpose, and how they use a hidden formula to keep you trapped in a never-ending cycle of spending. There's a concept in manufacturing called planned obsolescence. Most people have heard of it in phones and laptops. You buy a device, the battery gets worse after a year. You upgrade. But with electronics, companies can always blame something: a software update, a battery cycle. There's always a technical excuse. With a plastic toy, there is no software. There is no battery. There is only a design decision. And that decision was made decades ago. In the 1950s, American toy companies discovered something remarkable. When a toy broke, parents didn't get angry at the company. They got angry at their child. You broke it. You were too rough. And then the parent went right back to the store and bought another one. That single insight quietly became one of the most profitable discoveries in consumer goods history. Because if a toy lasts forever, you only buy it once. In the eyes of corporate shareholders, durability wasn't a feature. It was a financial liability. Keep that in mind, because in a few minutes, I'm going to show you the deeply unsettling internal logic these companies use to justify what they did next. To turn toys from durable goods into consumables, the industry had to get creative. They didn't just switch to cheap plastic and call it a day. That would be too obvious. Instead, toy manufacturers started hiring what they called durability engineers. But these engineers weren't hired to make toys last longer. They were hired to find the exact failure point, the minimum amount of material needed before a piece of plastic snaps. And then, they built the toy to hit that point on purpose. Not below it, not above it, exactly at it. They called it acceptable failure tolerance, which is just a corporate phrase for, we know this will break. We just need it to survive long enough that you can't return it. They weaponized the stress points. The tiny hinge on a dinosaur's jaw, the microscopic plastic peg that holds a doll's head in place, the exact spots where a child naturally applies the most pressure during normal play. Now here's the part that should actually shock you. The cheaper a toy looks, the more justified the break feels to you. So companies started designing toys to look cheaper than they actually are. Not just to save money, but to lower your expectations. You feel less cheated when something cheap-looking breaks. Your frustration was designed into the product before the mold was ever even made. But there was one problem. If toys break too fast, parents might actually wake up and stop buying. The executives knew this, so they needed a distraction. Enter the era of the blind box. Look at toy aisles today. Half the shelves are mystery eggs, blind bags, surprise boxes. You have no idea what you're actually buying. And this operates on the exact same psychological principle as a slot machine in Las Vegas. It's called a variable ratio reward schedule. When your brain doesn't know what reward it's going to get, it floods your system with dopamine during the anticipation phase. Let me say that again, because this is the biggest secret of the modern toy industry. The joy isn't the toy. The joy is the unwrapping. Once the plastic is ripped off and the mystery is revealed, the dopamine crashes. The child plays with the tiny piece of plastic for 20 minutes, tosses it aside. And because the toy is physically engineered to be fragile, it breaks a few days later. The child doesn't care, because the toy was never the point. The thrill was the unboxing. And the only way to get that thrill back? Buy another blind bag. They successfully divorced the quality of the product from the desire to purchase it. Now, you might think the premium brands would avoid this, the ones with massive reputations to protect. But look at what happened in the early 2000s when companies experimented with ultra-high-quality, unbreakable sets. Parents loved them, kids loved them, and sales actually went down because the purchase cycle slowed down. Kids didn't need replacements. So the premium brands made an interesting choice. They didn't abandon quality entirely. Instead, they created something called the ecosystem trap. They stopped engineering the break and started engineering incompleteness. They sell you the massive base set for surprisingly cheap, but the base set is useless without the expansion packs, the extra cars, the new outfits, the add-on tracks. The toy is never finished. there is always one more thing to add. And to make matters worse, they use ultra-brittle plastic on the connector pieces, the tiny tabs that link the entire track together. When one of those 1 millimeter tabs snaps, the entire massive track becomes useless. The pressure on you is immense. You have to rescue the whole ecosystem you already invested in. So you buy the base set all over again. The toy industry doesn't just profit from the replacement cycle. They use it to create what psychologists call the scarcity-urgency loop. When a toy breaks, a child's distress is real. And that distress almost always lands in a retail environment. A birthday, a holiday, a random Tuesday in Target. The child is emotionally activated. The parent is primed to solve the problem by spending. That emotional state is not a coincidence. The engineered break created it. You're not just buying a toy, you're buying emotional resolution for your child. And these companies know you will pay almost anything for that. This is why toy marketing is rarely aimed at kids anymore. The ads target you, the parent who wants to feel like a good parent, who wants to see their child stop crying and start smiling. The toy is just the delivery mechanism. Your guilt is the actual product being sold. If understanding the dark psychology behind everyday life genuinely interests you, or genuinely unsettles you, there's a whole channel right here built around exposing exactly this. Hitting subscribe is your weekly armor against these tactics. So let's come back to where we started. Your kid's toy broke. It wasn't bad luck. It wasn't your child being rough. It was a system. A system designed in the 1950s, refined for decades, and now so deeply embedded in how consumer goods work that most manufacturers don't even see it as deceptive anymore. To them, it's just product lifecycle management. To you, it's another $40. But the part that should really stick with you isn't the broken plastic. It's this. Every time you felt guilty for not replacing a toy fast enough, every time you felt like you were letting your kid down, that guilt was designed in a boardroom before the toy was ever built. You were never the consumer, you were the target. Now you know, and you can't unknow it. I'll see you in the next one.